Well, happy Wednesday evening, everybody. We are just in the pre-show right now. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. We are in the pre-show right now. And so it's very informal for the next about 3 minutes until we go live over on Odyssey Radio. Oh, and there's my echo. So I have to put in my headset. I keep forgetting to do this. Ellie, will you go around the back side and plug that in for me, please? Bear with the feedback for a second, folks. And thank you. Oh, it's not in yet. There we go. There we go. Ha! How's everybody tonight? Just make sure we are all set up to roll.
We are not in a good mood tonight, that's what.
We are not in a good mood. Who? We as in you?
Rowan.
Oh, Rowan is not in a good mood. She is not. Might even talk about that a little bit. I'm going to start the recorder. Hi, Ellie. Nothing to hear yet. It's just, but there was echoey. You could hear my voice in it. Here, listen, watch. I'll show you. If I turn this way up, see, you hear my voice? Mm-hmm. Hey, Ellie. But it echoes. And I've got that in case we have anybody call in or things like that. So, pre-show, getting ready, getting lined up. Thought we'd do, don't pull on that. To show people.
Look it. I did this.
She did that.
On this right now. And then
That's the one I like.
I did this
right there.
Baby Yoda. It's
Not that I don't like them all, but that's not Baby Yoda. That's Yoda. Baby Yoda isn't even Yoda.
He stole Darth Vader's lightsaber.
Oh, that's the red lightsaber. That's why you've got that. You can come and say hi if you want, Ro. You got about a minute. Okay, she doesn't want to.
I'm also working on Darth Vader.
That's fantastic, baby. I'm going to tell you goodnight.
I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye, everybody, she says. All right.
Watch where the hell you're running.
So, hey, everybody over there. It's 3:46 after. So we're getting pretty close. About a half a minute. We're going to be going live over on the radio station. So I'm going to need everybody in the house to not yell down here, please. Thank you. So I need everybody quiet. Thank you very much. Close the door if you need to yell. Matt Finn, good to see you. Paige, good to see you. Barbie D, good to see you. Oh, we're almost on top of it. So let's go dark. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Intrepid radio program with me, your host, Scotty Roberts, of course. Who else would I be? And we are here on Odyssey Radio. That's ODYSY radio.com. Come on over to Odyssey Radio where you can hear this show just like listening to a radio station. Talk radio, audio only. You can listen over on the stream, and there's other ways you can listen to it from over there. And you can see all the lineup that's going on and all the wonder that is Odyssey Radio. At the same time, you can come on over to the YouTube channel, which is where most of us are right now, where this show broadcasts in a simulcast in video. And you can join the Intrepid family chatting up a storm over there already in our chat room. And I want to welcome everybody who's over there here. I'm glad that you're here. Leslie, good to see you. Thank you, by the way. And Lalena, good to see Lalenya, I'm sorry. Good to see you. It's been a long time. Matthew Sainsbury. And who else is in here? This is the non-participants in the chat room. This doesn't mean much to you, other than to let you know that there's a whole bunch of people over there that are a great bunch of people that have been the core of this show, this broadcast, since we started on Odyssey Radio, even in its previous incarnation back almost 3 years ago now, if not a little more. And we have, since we started that, well, I take that back. I've been doing Intrepid Radio for years, but we have about 650 archived shows on the YouTube channel. So you can go in there and take a look at them. All kinds of stuff to listen to in your spare time. And it's not all dated. So you could listen to a show from 3 years ago and go, was that last night? So we try to keep the topics very current and things that will transcend the passage of time. So Matt Finn, good to see you, Master Finn. And I think Grumpy Stack is here, still suffering from a caterpillar bite, which until last night I did not know you could get.
Did you not take Benadryl yet? What the hell?
Rainey over there on her side of the studio is saying, has Doug Stack not taken Benadryl yet? What the hell, she just said. Rub Benadryl on your leg. He may have. It just may be that bad. So imagine if two of them bit you. The condition you'd be in. Hey, Elderberry. And a Steph Cuervo Queen is here in the chat room. And there's many people over there now. There's people there that are not showing up. If you want to, you can just listen through the YouTube channel, or you can join us. You can also listen to the audio over at OdysseyRadio.com. So I want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate the fact that you would show up every day, just like I do. That means a lot to me. And so there's plenty of stuff to talk about tonight. You know the topic. Remember the topic for tonight? If you saw the graphic, you know what they say about big feet? Well, big footprints. And it's feeling squatchy in here, or is it? Is it all our collective imagination? Is it all our psychology? Is it all being psyched into thinking these things? Is this why sightings are up and things like that? And by the way, if you hear grumbling in the background, it's my daughter. So she knows we're on air, but she has to make sure everybody hears the fact that she is unpleased with current situation. So as you might imagine, I'm going to shift gears for a second. As you might imagine, there was some discipline imposed tonight. And that has... Did you want to come over and talk about it? Okay, you're just murmuring at me in the background while I'm doing live radio. See, this is why I need a studio, folks. Away from the studio. With a door. And
We need not a studio with a door. We need a house with acres and barns so we can chain the kids up in the freaking barn so we don't have to listen to them for a couple hours.
there you go. Did you all catch that? We need a house with some acreage and a barn where where the children can be chained up for a while and we don't have to
No.
listen to them.
Call the cops if you do that.
Oh, the threat of law enforcement is being shoved out in front of my face. So you
Right.
better be careful there about hitting.
You look older on camera.
Yeah, you look fatter on camera. One good insult deserves another.
Yeah.
That's enough of that.
You just broke my nail.
Oh, your fake fun nails?
Bleach in my cut, too, when you grab my finger.
Okay, go. See ya. So, you got to get a phone first, kiddo. Yeah, because they've all been confiscated. She does have a cell phone, and so does my son. And the little girl doesn't have one yet. And they have limitations on those things, but they have all, as of tonight, become contraband. And it's really not a big thing that happened, but I'm going to tell you something. And Leslie, I think of you and I think of other people, Matt Finn, who are parents. Grumpy Stack, you're a parent. I know there's a few of us in here that are parents. About 10, 15 minutes ago, I was standing up in my closet in my bedroom getting a clean shirt for tonight. Imagine that, a clean shirt to do radio. And I was feeling sick to my stomach and on the verge of tears. Now, you know me, I'm no snowflake, but I cry easily. And it's because of the talking to I gave to my two older kids, Flynn and Rowan. And it is not just the talking to, it was elevated. I was being a dad in the stereotypical sense of the word. I imposed on them strict prohibitions for all their devices. And I repeated over and over again. So, because sometimes we'll say, you can't be on your phone. Well, you didn't say I couldn't be on my YouTube or whatever, and using a bad example there. But I said there will be no phones. There will be no internet. You are officially, your permission to use the internet is revoked. You shall not use the internet. You shall not use a phone. You shall not be found on a device. You will not be on television. You will have no access, zero, period, whatsoever. If you ask, can this be done now, the grounding? There will be more time imposed. I will call that more time for bad behavior. Now, at the core of this, it's not something they did wrong. You know what? I could go out and have them cut a switch off the bushes or the tree and bring it in, and I could spank them with that. I could use a paddle. And you know what? I got no problem with spanking when it's properly done. I didn't want to spank them. They're getting too old for spanking. A 12-year-old, a 10-year-old. And mind you, the 7-year-old is in on this too, but hers will be handled a little differently than the other kids. The 7-year-old's an instigator. You've seen how my kids are on this radio show. Now, I'm just talking to you because, and this is way off topic of the show, and this is all ended just 15, 20 minutes before this show started, as most things happen. And I just don't like it. I don't like the way I felt afterwards. I didn't do anything wrong or out of order. But I felt sick to my stomach. And I just stood there and going, I'm sick to my stomach. I don't feel good. It's not heart related. It's nothing like that. It's my gut was churned up. And my emotions were piqued. Now, I wasn't raging at my kids. I was speaking in an elevated voice. This is the way it is going to be now. Do you look at my eyes? Do you understand what I am saying? That's the tone of voice I had. And then when we were almost done, I quizzed them. I said, now, I need you to tell me why this is happening. The first thing my son did, he went, and I went, you don't know. Please do not, before you even start, do not tell me after a 20-minute railing that you have no idea what I am talking about and why this is being imposed. And he said, I didn't say that. I said, so you have the floor. You tell me. Then I did the same to my daughter. And I will tell you this, and I see some comments over there. I haven't quite looked at them yet because I want to get through this in a cogent thought. If you are a parent, you've experienced this. My kids are constantly bickering, constantly fighting, constantly tattling. And this is all flippin' day long when they're out of school. It starts the moment they come home from school till the moment they go to bed at night. And Rainey has had it up to her eyeballs. She needs a vacation, believe it or not. If nothing, just a, like she said, a barn where we can chain the kids up for a couple hours and go back in the house and not have to deal with them. The obvious questions would be asked. Well, you obviously are doing something wrong. What do you think you're doing wrong as a parent? You gonna make it?
No, my blankets are wet.
Okay, shh. I'm doing radio.
You asked.
Bye. Okay. All I needed was a nod. I'm okay. So, I'm seeing what Grumpy Stack said to Field Guy. I just know what Field Guy had to say. Something like, and people think I'm crazy because I have no kids. Grumpy Stack said, got to get laid first, Field Guy. Field Guy, I'm laughing at your expense. I'm sorry. But anyway, all of this came down to, yeah, things could be happening at school, Steve Clark, but I will tell you this. We get more calls from the school about behavior. I got to think it's acting out from something. But Rowan, I want to make sure she's out of the room because I don't want to talk about her like that. I'd rather talk about her behind her back. But she is getting too cool for her britches, kind of thing. And you see some of it on here, just light when she's pops into the radio show and walks through, even though I've told her not to do that. And I don't want to take much more time on this because we're already at 25 minutes past the hour, believe it or not. But suffice it to say, I said, my kids have been being naughty at school. They're not listening to mom and dad. Mom is frustrated beyond all belief. I'm frustrated because Rainey's frustrated. I handle things different than Rainey. I'll bombast. And not because I'm in a rage. It's controlled rage, I like to call it, because I can turn it on and shut it off when I need to. So I will tell you. Oh boy, Scotty, it's a girl thing. Yeah, it might be. It's also a boy in puberty thing, too. And the problem is they're passing this behavior on to their younger sister. Now, I'm going to tell you something I said to Flynn today. Again, this is not a first. I said, Flynn, you are supposed to be, as a young man, the hero to your little sisters, not the dick. And I said, I want to see the turdism end. I said, I don't care what you have to do, the depths you have to delve within your soul to find the hero that is supposed to be the hero to his younger sisters. I said, they need to look up to you. And I said, you are not being a very good person on that front. And that's to put it mildly. And yes, our kids are what we model. Rainey and I fight like the normal people, but we do not bicker and fight constantly. I love my wife. My wife loves me. And we think we show that to our kids too. On top of that, my kids, they will slough off on projects we've given them, chores to get. That's the word I was looking for. Chores, not a project. It's a chore. They won't do them. We'll look and go, you didn't do your chore. Get on it from yesterday or the day before, and something, because we're not always monitoring them every step of the way. Hey, you know how to do this thing? Go do it. I need it done. I need it done. And yet they don't fulfill their responsibilities. They mistreat each other. They fight. They even fight each other physically at school. Rowan and Flynn got into a scuffle at school. And as a parent, you want to say, I'm embarrassed because of you, because we are getting the reputation of being the parents that have it's those parents of those kids, those Roberts kids. And that bothers me too, but not as much as their behavior does. If people have a problem with me and want to assume something, well, they can go fuck themselves. There you go. Oh, sorry. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Odyssey Radio. Sorry, Ron. And so there is all that stuff that goes on. The saga didn't work. Matt Finn. Macabre Menace says children need chores, builds character and a sense of responsibility. It's just housework to parents. Yeah. But then when they don't do their chores, you know what they do? They've totally forgotten that they haven't done their chore. And they're like, hey, can you buy me this thing I'm looking at? This is constant. We don't spoil our kids with stuff. Well, I like my kids to have things. Yes. I love giving my kids gifts. But I don't love giving them gifts when they slouch, when they don't off at home, they don't do their chores, they disrespect their mom. I've had the talk with Flynn. Flynn, I don't want him to feel like I'm talking about him. So Flynn is moody and crabby. He might even have some depression. We've got him going to see a counselor. We're not getting depression out of anybody so far, but he's got that thing going on. He's very quiet. If Rainey or I ask him to do something, he will scream at her. I don't want to do that, I said. I'm not doing it. And I'm like, I hear that. I'm like, excuse me? Do you want to look at your mom and rephrase that and check your tone of voice? I want to watch you do this. First, I want to watch you apologize to your mom, hopefully on bended knee, for yelling at your mom. You are 12 years old. You are not 30. And I hope to God at 30 you would never dream of yelling at your mom. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff we deal with. And it's day in, day out. And it's all day long, every day. You wonder how we have any time for fun time. Rainey and I, sometimes they go off to school and it's like, Rainey will look at me and she goes, I hate children. I said, I'm right there with you, honey. Yes, kill the children. Yes, I will do it, my master. So anyway, that's all to say that I love my children. I know they love Rainey and me. You can probably tell with Rowan. Even tonight, she's pissed off at me. I told her, you check that pissed off. I said, if I see I said, if you want to be pissed off, you can be pissed off, but that's not going to change your attitude. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. So, nipping some of this stuff in the bud, I feel crappy. I still feel emotively strung out from this over the last hour. Gut-wrenching. So I wanted to share that. Getting that off my chest and my mind with you guys as you're listening helps me to calm it down. Am I a professional? Can I do a show while that's going on in my life? Sure. I could come on and I go, hey, everybody, how was your day? Good evening. Let's talk jovially and jolly. And let's hit our topic right away. You know? But I share that with you guys because I want you to know who I am and what I'm bringing to the table when I get here. We're still going to hit our Bigfoot topic tonight. Don't worry. It's 9:27 already. So that means we got about close to a half an hour left of this show to hit this topic. And so let's talk big feats that may make you happy, Scotty. I'm happy anyway. I'm just pent up. So bear with me. If I bark at any of you tonight, that's why. All right. Move it out. We're done. We're done with that. Need a drink? I don't know what's in this. No, it's not alcohol. I got some sun today and yesterday. I have taken advantage of the sunny days coming up here. Now, it's only been in the 50s. Well, I think it got into the 60s today here, but the sun was shining, and I would take a little break around lunchtime, midday today, and I went outside. I did the same yesterday. I took that phone call with Professor Bauer yesterday, and sat in the sun outside for about an hour and a half, talking with him. I had phone calls to make today. I had things to do. I took a lunch break, and I went outside, and I sat in the sun today. And so I'm feeling good, getting a little color, and feeling pretty good about spring coming. It can get warm now. So Sam Squatch, says Ryan Gale, argues with his kids. I'm sure he does. Now, before we get going, I've got a little video clip. And in StreamYard, which I use to broadcast, I don't know that my recording equipment, my recording program is going to catch this for everybody for the archive. If you're listening on air, I'm pretty sure you're going to hear this. I want to play this little clip. Now, there's hundreds of these clips out there, and it's just an audio clip, and there's no video to it. It was from a video, and the audio is of, I looked for several different avenues, looking for the best Sasquatch vocalization videos I could find. And of course, when you get vocalizations out in the woods and somewhere, it's everybody will try to find what you're really listening to as opposed to a Bigfoot. And it's a coyote, it's a wolf, it's a bear, it's a moose making moose call. And I grabbed this clip because it was a guy out hunting, and his wife was with him. You'll hear her talking a little bit in the video, and they had a small child with them, small enough, a toddler, still not speaking in words, making noise. And that child responds to what he's hearing out in the woods. And so without dragging it out too much more, hey, Sean Stroik, welcome. I am going to play this little video. Now, my video will go off as I play this, and you'll just see, I put the graphic for tonight's show up in here. I'm going to add this to the stream, and hopefully, you can still hear me talking over this. Let's get this thing going here. I'm going to back it up right there, and let's turn the sound up and go. Here we go. Oh. Waiting for the sound. Oh my God. Mama's telling the kid, let's go. Shh. Now, what would you think if you were hearing this in the woods? This is in Ontario, Canada, as much as they would pinpoint it. Okay, I'm going to remove that from the stream now. We can play that again if you want to hear that again. But yeah, that gave me goosebumps, Matt Finn, when I heard it. And you could see the mother, the camera was pointed just out at the woods, a clearing, and you see the big pine trees and stuff like that in the distance. And they're out there, and he's hunting, and his wife is there and their small child. And you hear the baby reacting to it. And you hear the woman at the very beginning, she pretty much said, oh my God. And the child was responding to it. And she was kind of shushing the child. And yeah, it sure does, Matthew Sainsbury. It sounds very dramatic. And if you listen closely to that vocalization, some might say, oh, it sounds like maybe it's a bear growling. Well, then it's got different qualities as the tone is coming down in each one of the howls. It's not a wolf. It's not a coyote. It's definitely not a moose. So it's, to me, that's a very interesting little video. Wasn't a bear, a mountain lion, or a wolf. And this is up in Ontario. If you want to hear it just a little bit, I'll play it one more time. Lasts about 2.5 minutes. And then we're going to get in. I want to talk about this stuff, but I thought this would be a good way to introduce this topic tonight. Let me add this to the stream one more time. Well, if it'll play. Listen for it as it dies down each time. Oh my God. Listen to that. What do you suppose that is? Okay. All right. That was that clip. Now I played that only because I know some good Bigfoot researchers, and I know of some of the research that's being done. I want to recommend a pretty decent show that's out there. I used to love finding Bigfoot just because it was fun to watch, and they never found Bigfoot. But the show was all about just examining people's claims and looking at clips and photos and going to sites where things happened, where there were sightings and things. And the new show that's been out, Expedition Bigfoot, I think it's called, and it's taking it very seriously. And the researchers are very serious, and the equipment they use, they're doing things that have never been done before. And it's a very interesting show. If you want to check it out, I watch it on Discovery Plus. You can see it. But it's a very good show. Bigfoot doesn't cry, Sean Stroik says, unless he sees Chuck Norris. There it is. I used to say, what does Bigfoot do in his time off? He makes castings of Rocky Stucci's feet. That was back when Rocky and I were doing radio a long time ago. And hey, Niall, welcome from Ireland. Good to see you. And so this is how I wanted to launch this little talk that we're going to do about this tonight. And look at some of these things. I've got a couple of articles I've pulled up because I thought they were very interesting. There is a Nat Geo piece that I want to talk about. There's also kind of a skeptical piece. There's some pieces from Live Science, some from the Scientific American, forensic experts, and so on. And so they're from Nat Geo. I wanted to hit this one kind of first. They're talking about how there are forensic experts that talk about Bigfoot and the existence of Bigfoot. Now, I do want to say this at the beginning of this. Bigfoot, just because Bigfoot hasn't been found, doesn't mean Bigfoot doesn't exist. I think this is one of those weird, anomalous types of creatures. And when we say cryptid, you say cryptid all the way on this one, because in particular, say this particular show I was watching with these, they've got somebody that is a lot like Jane Goodall is on that show. Mayer is her last name. And there are other researchers, and they captured things on film where you're seeing shadows being cast, but there's nothing casting the shadow, but a bipedal creature walking across the pond in front of a rock wall, and they've got their big lights shined on it, and you see the shadow move, but there's nothing there. So there's things like this that starts to raise other questions. And it's got even these animalologists, whatever you call them. There it is, Steph, Maria Mayer. That's her. And some of the other names, I can't even think of all the names of the people there. But I didn't, Niall, I did not interview Jeff Meldrum. I'd like to. I don't think it would be hard. I just have to call him and ask. I have spoken with Eric Altman, who is big with the state of Pennsylvania Bigfoot organization. I know he's the one who gave me this guy back here. If you see what I got back here, it's been on here. I got to take my headset off to do this. Wah. This is a casting that he gave me. And there you can see some of the details when the light's not totally obliterating it. But this is a casting that he gave me that was made off of, this is a copy of a casting. And he gave me this one. He had a couple of others. And so this is the one that is usually mounted to my wall. And I can't remember where this is from. I used to have it on the back side of this, and I lost that. It came off a while back. He gave this to me about 12 years ago. And so this is pretty neat. And so there's a Bigfoot print, one that has been fairly, I believe Meldrum had qualified this or quantified this, the original as being an authentic print. And there's different things you have to look for. So that sits right now, that sits back here against Senenmut. Hopefully I'll never drop it. So Bigfoot, the existence of Bigfoot, there are skeptics who want to write it off right away. They're just denialists, but there are also those who cannot write it off. And so I wanted to share with you some of this information I was looking up on these guys. And especially when talking about whether or not he's real. It's been the subject of campfire stories for decades. It's Bigfoot's this camera elusive, grooming challenged, if you will, bipedal ape man that roams the mountain regions of North America, and it's called Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and we know all those names. And thousands of people claim to have seen the hairy hominoid, but the evidence of its existence is really fuzzy. It's about as fuzzy as the pictures you get. There are few clear photographs of the oversized beast. There's no bones have ever been found. Countless pranksters have admitted to faking footprints. Yet a small, vociferous number of scientists remain undeterred, risking ridicule from other academics. They propose that there's enough forensic evidence to warrant something that's never been done, a comprehensive scientific study to determine if the legendary primate actually exists. And I do believe that it's not sponsored by Nat Geo, but this show that's out now, this Expedition Bigfoot, they're really putting the balls to the wall, so to speak, and attempting to find every way possible from LiDAR to, as a matter of fact, they captured something in LiDAR. Now, you know what LiDAR is, where you see the three-dimensional, they have a drone go over and takes a three-dimensional shot, and you see everything is reconstructed. That whole forest is reconstructed in digital form. And you can go down and in, and you can turn the angles around and look all around. And there was something where they thought they had heard something or seen something in the woods, and they focused on that point, and you see the blur in the LiDAR even of something that was moving through the woods. It was bipedal and very tall. So it's interesting when you start looking at these. The ghost image, Steph, I think you've seen that because you knew the doctor I was talking about, Mayer. So you've seen that, Steph, over in our chat room. That ghost image is pretty compelling. And so given the scientific evidence, I'm convinced that there's a creature out there that's yet to be identified. Now, Jeff Meldrum says the same thing. He's a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University in Pocatello. And there's been thousands of sightings of Bigfoot. Sasquatch stories go back centuries. You remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Teddy Roosevelt before he became the president of the United States over 100 years ago, had a sighting that he related, and he called them goblins, I think they were. They didn't call them Bigfoot or Sasquatch that he knew of at that point. And tales of mythical giant apes lurk in oral traditions of most of the Native American tribes, as well as in Europe and Asia, the Himalayas. It's the abominable snowman, or the Yeti. In Australia, it's the Yowie. And so Bigfoot advocates hypothesize that the primate is the offspring of an ape from Asia that wandered to North America during the Ice Age. And they believe that there are at least 2,000 ape men walking upright in North America's woods today. I don't know how they come to that figure. But I was listening to the radio not long ago, and I don't know, I was driving, and I tuned this in, and it was late, and it was an old replay of an Art Bell episode from, God, probably damn near 20 years ago. And Art Bell was talking to a guy that had called in, and he kind of did an off-mic little talk with him. The guy didn't want to give his name out or anything like that, but he was a hunter. And he claimed he and two of his buddies, several years before that, while hunting, had run across what they referred to as Bigfoot. And you can usually tell by somebody's speech patterns if they are making up a story or it's a practiced or rehearsed thing. And this guy came across very genuine, and he talked about having shot one. And Art Bell even quizzed him back then, saying, you just shot one? He goes, well, we didn't know what it was at first. We thought it was a bear, and we were hunting, and I don't remember all the details of the story. And then the thing, he says, when they finally did catch up to it, because it was bleeding out, he said they took the bodies and they buried them. There were two of them, and they figured they were husband and wife. He said one of them had breasts, the other one didn't. He said the face was damn scary. He says, because Art Bell, what did it look like? And he, in his account, gave the account of something that he says it was almost like it looked like you would think of an ape. He says, but there was more human to that face than anything else. And he said it's eerie even talking about it. And so you remember that Art Bell program, Leslie Holker, in the chat room? Anyway, that was a very interesting description. So now an adult male is said to be at least 8 feet tall, weigh about 800 pounds, have feet twice the size of a human's, and the creatures are described as shy and nocturnal. Their diets consist mostly of berries and fruits. Lately, they've come out saying that they also eat meat. Matt Moneymaker, who you know, he was on the Finding Bigfoot series, and he's got his organization for years, has been searching for Bigfoot in the woods of western Ohio, and he claims finally to came eye to eye with the elusive primate. He said it was 2:00 in the morning, and the moon was a quarter full. Suddenly, this is Matt Moneymaker, suddenly there was an 8-foot tall creature standing 15 feet away, growling at me. He wanted to let me know I was in the wrong place. Moneymaker lives in Dana Point in Southern California. He's a lawyer who runs his own marketing agency, and in his spare time, he leads the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and it's a network of more than 3,000 people who claim to have seen the Sasquatch. Unfortunately, no one's been able to snap a clear picture of the beast ever. And perhaps the most compelling photographic evidence of Bigfoot is a controversial short film that we've all seen 100 times. The classic pose of Bigfoot has been taken from that by Roger Patterson in 1967, the Patterson Gimlin film, which appears to document a female Bigfoot striding along a riverbank in Northern California. You know, it was just a handful of years ago that it was kind of talked about for the first time that this is a female because it had boobs, hairy boobs, but boobs. It certainly wasn't human. And now Bigfoot advocates are increasingly turning to forensic evidence to prove the existence of the giant creature. Investigator Jimmy Chilcutt of the Conroe Police Department in Texas specializes in finger and footprints, has also analyzed more than 150 casts of Bigfoot prints that Meldrum, the Idaho State professor, keeps in a laboratory. And Chilcutt says one footprint found in 1987 in Walla Walla, Washington, has convinced him that Bigfoot is real. He said the ridge flow pattern and the texture was completely different from anything I've ever seen. He said it certainly wasn't human and of no known primate that I've ever examined. And the plant ridges followed lengthwise along the foot, the print ridges lengthwise along the foot, unlike human prints, which flow across the foot. The texture of the ridges was about twice the thickness of a human, which indicated that this animal has really thick skin, especially on its feet. Meldrum, meanwhile, says a 400-pound block of plaster, known as the Skookum Cast, provides further evidence of Bigfoot's existence. The cast was made in September of 2000 from an impression of a large animal that had apparently lain down on its side to retrieve some fruit next to a mud hole in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in Washington State. And by the way, you can look that up. It's called the Skookum, S-K-O-O-K, Skookum, U-M, the Skookum Cast. You can take a look at that. Meldrum says that the cast contains recognizable impressions of a forearm, a thigh, buttocks, an Achilles tendon and heel, and he's 40 to 50% bigger than a normal human, he said. And the anatomy doesn't jive with any known animals, said Meldrum. And so a few academics believe Meldrum could be right. And renowned chimpanzee researcher Jane Goodall last year surprised an interviewer from National Public Radio when she said she was sure that large, undiscovered primates such as the Yeti or the Sasquatch exist. And of course, you got skeptics, and we're already at, we got about 3 minutes left of this show. But remember, when this show is over, we're going to have the Captain's Cabin, which starts right as this show ends over in the YouTube channel. You can come and join us if you want to hear more about this. We'll talk about this a little bit over in the Captain's Cabin after we go off air at Odyssey Radio. If you're listening via Odyssey, come on over to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join us, and we'll try to maintain this a little bit, this discussion on this, and we'll talk about this some more. But the bottom line is they don't have a body, said Michael Dennett. They wonder why no Bigfoot's ever been captured, dead or alive. He writes for the Skeptical Inquirer magazine, who's followed the Bigfoot debate for over 20 years. Bigfoot buffs note that it's rare to find a carcass of a grizzly bear in the wild, let alone a Bigfoot. And while that's true, grizzlies haven't escaped photographic documentation like Bigfoot has. Hair samples that have been recovered from alleged Bigfoot encounters have turned out to come from elk, bears, or cows, but not all of them. There are some that have come back with imprecise data that is primate in nature. Now, many of the sightings of the footprints have proved to be even hoaxes. And so after Bigfoot tracker Ray Wallace died in California nursing home last year, his children finally announced that their prank-loving dad had created the modern myth of Bigfoot when he used a pair of carved wooden feet to create a track of giant footprints in a Northern California logging camp in 1958. And if you believe that, play this leg and it'll play Jingle Bells. I don't think one guy is responsible for having created the Bigfoot myth when it goes back much further in Native American culture, hundreds of years further. So the sightings keep going on. It's the same kind of eyewitness reports that you see for Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, ghosts, you name it. This guy, Dennett, said that the monster thing is a universal product of the human mind. We hear such stories from all around the world, and he says we're all pretty much duped by those, and we're psychologically set up for that. So I see Niles making some interesting comments, and some of you, we're going to hit those in the captain's cabin when this show goes off in about 30 seconds. Not even. So I want to thank you all for being here. If you're listening, thanks for being here. And you know what? I want you to live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Okay, folks, we are back for the captain's cabin. I got to turn my screen. I'm sorry to do that. And unplug that headset, which I don't like to wear. I only wear it because it casts an echo if I don't while doing the radio show. And so I want to welcome you back. This is the captain's cabin. If you haven't left, we're still going to go. We're going to carry this on a little bit because I think it's very interesting. Now, I got to put on my glasses because I got to see what is going on in the chat room over here. Steph says, do you think that area you were in still has a Bigfoot activity? Okay, she's talking about some other things here. I got to go backwards now and try to pick up what everybody's saying. Niles says, personally, it's illogical that a bipedal humanoid exists. Even the most elusive primates, the great apes of the Chinese mountains, have been established. This is true, Niall. I think most people that are Bigfoot researchers would almost mimic that same sentimentality. But at the same time, there is some thinking that there might be something stranger going on with this. And of course, there's been talk of interdimensionality. There's been talk of ufology, aliens. There's been talk of ghosting type of things. And the reason those are used as examples or ways to try to explain it is because there's no way to explain some of the things that have been seen and yet unverified. Like in the show I was talking about where the researchers there got the shadow cast across the rocky face, but there was nothing there to cast the shadow, and it walked across from one side to the other. And you'd have to see the video to understand it. They were just shining the water at night across the pond where they're hearing rocks falling and stuff going on, and they saw this bipedal character, very tall, casting a long shadow from their flashlights onto the wall behind him, but nothing there in front of the shadow. So some interesting things. There are anomalous things like that that have happened that have led people to wonder what the heck is going on. Hey, and by the way, yes, happy birthday, Andy. Leslie's husband, Andy. It's his birthday today. He's the guy you see smoking the cigar in my Scotty Roberts ad for my graphic design. The rainy ad, I call that. And so you start looking into this more. All I can do is speculate. I've never had firsthand experience with this. The closest I've come to picking up anything like that is that anomalous creature, character, person that I picked up in Egypt. But of course, out in the middle of the desert, I don't think you have a Bigfoot. You've got gin out there, though. You've got things like that. Now, when I showed you those pictures, remember I said it was 6.5 to 7 years after the time I had taken that photo before I actually noticed it in the photograph. And that was about 2.5 years ago. And I looked at it and I thought, what the fuck is that? And my first reaction was immediate, without speaking it, or it just was in my head. This looks an awful lot like those Bigfoot pictures you get where you only see a partial image and you don't see, you can't make out what the rest of it is. And it leaves you in question. And so it's an anomalous thing. If you could catch a picture of a spirit, what would that look like? Is Bigfoot, if it eats meat, as they say it does, and eats berries and wanders through the wood and makes a bed at night in the brush and builds things that sticks in trees that crisscross and these old structures in the middle of the woods that say basically keep out of this area, what does that indicate to us? Is it primate or is it just look primate? I know they start to plug in anything that looks human as to primate. Maybe humans aren't even primate. You ever think of that? So there's a lot of questions about this. And I was looking at a bunch of these articles, and some of these I wanted to get into because they're a little more skeptical than I even like. Say Live Science or Scientific American. They talk about these things, but they talk about them with, you can almost see the tongue in one side of their cheek as they talk about this stuff, because they are, like the title of this one article in Scientific America, in parentheses it says big, but then it says foot in mouth, Bigfoot language. And so the big question is, are they really giving this a fair hearing? They're presenting out of what they would refer to as scientific skepticism. So let's see. Niall says, what does stranger mean? Either they exist or they don't. You can't deny that reality of Bigfoot is unlikely. I can deny that that's unlikely. So where does that leave us? The existence of ghouls who live beneath the earth. You know, there are stranger things, and you just asked what is stranger? Stranger means there are a hell of a lot of things we probably don't know shit about in this world, in this universe, definitely. I can't write off the Bigfoot when there's been enough. Pretty soon, even if you don't have hard evidence, you have enough anecdotal evidence to prove the existence of something. I say that with ghosts and ghost hunting. Now, I don't know if it's a ghost. I don't know if it's an interdimensional being. I don't know if it's a spirit. I don't know what it is. What I do know is that I've encountered things. Now, what do you do with that information? You go, obviously, these things don't exist, so I must be making that up in my mind or whatever. That's the alternative to saying, as unlikely as it might seem, there might be something to it. It doesn't have to be likely to exist. Remember, we live in an awfully big universe. And we live our planet. We think we've conquered everything there is to know about the planet, but I don't think we have. From the mere standpoint of not having the scientific data to back up that statement, but having it's like Carl Sagan once said, his parents instilled in him two things that he carried with him all his life. One was the absolute need for the scientific method. And the second was to never lose your sense of wonder. Now, I have a sense of wonder about this. The scientific method, remember, the scientific method doesn't exist. It wasn't formulated so we can prove something to be real or exist. The scientific method exists to disprove something. You take something into the lab, or into under controlled settings. You're systematically disproving something. And now with Bigfoot, we've got a lot of data. We've got a lot of anomalous data. We've got a lot of anecdotal stories and accounts and photographs and recordings like the one I played earlier in the show. Now, somebody would listen to that and the immediate skeptic would say, well, that's obviously not a Bigfoot, so let's determine what it is. That's the wrong approach, even for a skeptic. A skeptic should say, I have no idea what that is. I need to start ruling out things before I accept that it could be a Bigfoot, which I don't think exists. You can have your own chosen beliefs on it. I want, like with anything else, I don't want to believe something. I want to know something. So I want to know. Lalanya says, I'm telling you, I laughed about Bigfoot for years until a series of events that happened on a camping trip. You know what, Lalanya? Would you be willing to call in and tell us some stories? I'm going to put the whoever would like to call in and talk about this topic. Here it is. Here's the number to call into this studio line, and I'll put you on, and we'll talk about this. So call in, and Lalanya, if you want to call in and talk to us about it, that'd be fantastic. So I'd like to hear some of your stories. So would Leslie. Matt Finn says it's something you'll never know. I have a feeling you're right. But are either of us right about that, Matt? There are researchers that know more than you or I combined on this topic that think it's going to come around. We're going to know something. So I'm going to, before we get too further, Lalanya, if you're going to call in, if you're going to get ready to be on camera or whatever you need to do, I'm going to play this this little video recording again for those of you who did not get a chance to hear it at the beginning of the show. Well, it wasn't even the beginning of the show. We were halfway through the show before we got to it. It was the beginning of the topic. Here you go. Let's play this again. I want you to hear this because I think it's really interesting. This is in the North Woods in Ontario. Now, somebody's either out hoaxing that in the deep, dark woods of northern Ontario, Canada. I'm going to bring Lalanya in just a minute here. It's eating my book. It was that, or he had to eat Jack Link's beef jerky. Here, I'm going to add Lalanya.
Oh,
Here we go.
it's really dark out here. Sorry, I'm
I
outside.
see. That's okay. That's okay. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. What have you experienced? What have you seen?
So my husband and I went on a camping trip. It was, gosh, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Didn't really believe in Bigfoot, neither did he. We were at Stockton Lake in Missouri, which is really just a vast forest that, it's public forest, but nobody can live there. It's kind of protected. And it was early in the season. We were the only people in this huge primitive camping area.
Yeah.
And my husband was out, getting wood and stuff like that. And I was in the campsite, and we started hearing that tree knocking. And
Yes.
he came back over and he asked me, he goes, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then we started kind of making Bigfoot jokes, oh, ha, ha. And then he went back out and he was getting more wood stuff. And then we heard this just blood curdling scream. He actually ran up because he thought it was me. He thought something had happened to me. And I'm like standing there just completely frozen. I'm like, I don't know what that was. That probably happened 2 more times. And then it was pretty quiet for the rest of the evening. Well, that night, I woke up to something walking right next to the tent. And it wasn't like a deer or something. It didn't have that, 4-leg type of step. It was very much like a human walking next to the tent. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody is out there. And so my husband got up and he went out to kind of take a look around, being that there was like nobody around for miles. And he just looked around, he didn't see anything. So he decided to use the bathroom, and he said he was standing there, and in the pathway, there was just this huge something standing in the pathway. And he basically ran, jumped back into the tent. And he won't admit this because he's very much an outdoorsy guy. But he said like every hair on his body stood up when he saw this thing. And he's like, he just had to get away. So that was too much stuff to deny it at that point.
Did you camp for another night?
No, that was actually our last night there, thankfully.
That was the last night.
Yeah.
I think too, when you see things like that, the first thing that people who are skeptical will say, well, it was obviously a bear. You saw a bear standing on its hind legs. Well, you know what? I'm not a zoologist, but I think I'd be able to tell the difference between the legs of a bear and the legs of an upright primate type of creature.
Absolutely. And my husband, he's been a hunter for years and out in the woods, so he knows the sounds and stuff.
He knows the sounds, he knows the animals. There's something Niall had said that you could hear the hoofbeats in that video, and it was obviously a moose. I will say this, Niall, is that the moose factor came up with that video. Somebody said, oh, it's a moose. And they listened closely. It was brought into animal specialists who know this stuff and said it was definitely not a moose. And what you think might be the hoofbeats, you'd have to watch the video. That's something where you're hearing the mother and the kid walking around. The calls are coming from way out in the hills, the forest, and echoing off of everything. So I don't think you'd hear much hoofbeat anyway. It wasn't that close. So anyway, Lalanya, was there any more to your experience? Did you have anything else? What was the conversation between you?
No, that was pretty much it. It's just like everything that you see on one of those, Bigfoot hunter shows, because I like to watch the shows, even if, I didn't believe them. There's like everything that you would, think you would see on there is just like was happening. And we explained most of it away at first, but that, after he saw something very large standing in the pathway, it was, 1 + 1 = 2. So
yes. Well, that's the same thing when we do ghost investigations. You just call them that. You don't know if you're talking to a ghost, a spirit, a interdimensional being, a whatever, a whatever, a whatever. But what we do know is that something communicates with us. And you're not just picking up EVPs, you're having conversations.
Absolutely.
And I've experienced too much of that. And there's no way for somebody to fake that. And you hear what you hear and you experience what you experience. And I think I don't like the kind of skepticism that looks for any reason for something to not be true. I've said, why doesn't the skeptic say it could be true? It could be real. It could also be something we don't understand, that we have no idea. Like I very commonly say, there are veils some veils we cannot pierce. We don't know everything there is to know. And so we keep looking, you keep exploring and so on. So, well, I appreciate your calling in, giving us your story. That was
Absolutely.
pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. That was really cool of you to do that. And
Thank you for having me.
all right. We'll talk to you again soon. All right. That was Lalanya. And so Dark Waters channel has some amazing stories, says Morgan Snow. And I'm going to have to look some of those up. When I was looking this up, I didn't even know where to look for. I just started putting in best Bigfoot calls. And of course, in the internet world we live in, social media and everything, everybody who posts them, this is the best ghost story you have ever heard. You got about 5,000 people will say that. So anyway, Niall, if you wanted to call in, coast is clear now for you to call in. I can bring you right up. You want to talk a little bit about this? Anybody else, if you want to talk, I will post that. There it is. It's in the description below the video, but at the same, here's Dave Potter. Let me add him in. Uncle Dave, you're in the car again.
I'm in the car again. I'm coming home from painting.
You gonna say you living in your car these days or what?
I feel like it. It's an hour and a half commute each way, so I spend 3 hours a day driving.
Yes. What do you think about all this?
Okay, so one of the things I think it's an offshoot of man. Okay, like as we were going through Homo erectus and the Homo sapien and all that, there's some offshoot in there that is Bigfoot.
But let me ask
the reason I say that is because anytime they've ever had relatively recent hair samples, like the farmer says he jumped over that fence right there by that tree, and they go over there and there's tufts of hair stuck in the fence, right?
Yeah.
They take those tufts of hair and they send them in. Almost always it comes back as human.
Yeah.
And so they had I was watching a show where I think they were tracking a Yeti. They were way up high in the Himalaya someplace where they had spotted one once before. And they're up there and there's nothing up there but mountain goats. And they find footprints and they find this watering hole. And so they take samples of the water because they figure if anything,
yes, I saw that.
Drinking out of this, and the samples came back as contaminated with human.
Yes.
And nobody else had been up there. It's a secluded forest. It's a royal forest. You have to have.
I saw all the reasoning they put behind taking those samples too.
Yeah.
And the results.
And so my thought is, well, if it's an offshoot of man, maybe it's close enough that it doesn't register as different than us. Okay. Yep. And then you go back. I remember that Art Bell show. I listened to that live when he was talking about shooting that guy or shooting
this was
that.
Just like
the way he told the story, the way I remember it, there were two of them. He and his buddy were looking at it. One of them turned and charged him. They shot it. The other one then charged them, and they had to shoot it too. And they initially pulled them over and hid them under a bush.
That's right.
They were trying to figure out what to do with them. And
they said they looked so human. They didn't know if they were going to be charged with murder.
They looked like humans, and they were afraid that they would be prosecuted for shooting them. And so then they went back later and buried them.
Yes. And I think they were going to lead somebody. Now, I don't think anything ever came of that, or we'd have heard about it.
If I remember right, they tried to take somebody else out there, and they couldn't find the bodies. They had been dug up.
Never heard the follow-up to that.
I think if I remember right, when they went back, somebody talked them into taking them there to show them. They went back, and where they had buried them, which weren't in very deep graves, the graves had been dug up and the bodies were gone.
Yes.
So it could be that if they're tribal, and maybe they can detect smell better than we can. Maybe they have different senses than we have. Maybe the rest of the tribe tracked them down, found them, and removed them. Ancient man had burial practices. So maybe the reason we don't find them is because the way they dispose of their dead.
I would think the first thing that comes to my mind with ancient man is closer to the animals. So maybe more, it would be closer down that evolutionary scale, but at the same time, a little dumber. You know, that's the way I think. How are they so elusive?
They're
so
clearly
elusive.
Intelligent enough to know they do not want to interact with modern man any more than they have to.
Right.
And the Native American tales of them they're very elusive. That as that probably as that genetic split happened and Homo erectus is going this way and Homo sapiens going that way, they may have learned that these hairless ones are dangerous.
Yes.
And they just stay away from us.
I'm going to bring Niall in too.
Yeah, bring Niall in.
Here we go.
Hey,
Let's
Dave.
get the three of us. Hey, Niall. Let me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you clearly.
I can. I'm going to get rid of this. I didn't have that showrunner going. Let me get rid of this. There we go. Okay, Niall, welcome.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Scotty. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Where do you start with this? You know.
Oh, I know.
Well,
I think. Yeah, I think the Bigfoot phenomena is hugely divisive, especially in the States.
But Niall, how do you account for? They're found on almost every continent, and people that don't have mass media, when you go back,
Dave,
you've got all these different people that tell the same story or the similar story and a similar description.
I have to disagree with you from the word go. They are not found on every continent. There are
Australia, Europe, Asia.
No, there's stories.
America.
There's stories of them. There's not evidence of them.
Okay, China doesn't exist. China is a myth. I've never been there, so because I've never seen it, it doesn't exist. And you can say, well, here's a picture of a Chinaman. I could say, well, it could be Korean. I don't know. You could say, I know people that are Chinese. Well, I know people that say they've heard of Bigfoot.
I think that...
how much evidence do you need? I mean, there's enough. If it were a murder trial, there's enough evidence there to convict somebody. There's photographic evidence. There's plaster casts. There's all kinds of stuff like that.
I'm not sure any of that would stand up in a court of law. You know, to be honest.
In a murder trial, it would. All that evidence would stand up to convict somebody of murder. Here's the casts of their shoes. They were at the location. Here's an eyewitness that says they saw them there. Here's a blurry photograph, but we're pretty sure that's the guy.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's circumstantial, you know, and that's all it is. But listen, I want to start off by saying this is a hugely emotive topic, as Scotty will testify to. The Bigfoot Sasquatch thing is probably the most fought over and squabbled about a topic in the entire history of humankind, or you know, well before Darwin. We've discovered our ancestors going back 30,000 years, and yet we have absolutely no trace of these particular creatures. And we can argue about the missing link and the kind of offshoots of these various hominoid ape-like creatures, which, if they're hominoid ape-like creatures, then they're related to us. So therefore, they will leave a vestige of themselves behind. It stands to reason. I mean, if it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we have traces of every creature on this planet, with the exception of the deep oceans. Every creature has ever walked the face of this earth has left a vestige of itself behind. And some guy digging in the dirt somewhere is going to find something. And when it comes to the DNA, huge hairy creatures are going to leave strands of hair everywhere. And there's always these stories about, the farmers are picking hairs off trees and they send them into the local lab and they disappear. And, then it's the whole conspiracy, cover it up, I don't believe it. It doesn't make logical sense. It's like a huge amount of effort to disguise exactly what.
I think here. Let me cut in here. I think that there is a certain pragmatism that we have to abide by, but at the same time, we have to be skeptical of pragmatism. And what I mean by that is this. Is that we approach things saying we have a certain criteria of things that must be met in order for it to be so in our world. And if the criteria is not met, we push it out. It's not real, or it doesn't exist, or it's this. What we're not able to seem to come to terms with, especially in Western culture, is that there might be things that lie outside of our list of criteria. There might be things that lie outside of our scientific method. There might be things that lie outside what we would normally say, well, if it's a primate, it should be findable. Well, what if it's a primate and it's not findable? What does that then do? We haven't proven that it exists, but let's say it exists. What if you have a primate that's able to do that? Does that changes the category? It changes the criteria. So what is it about this creature that makes it so elusive? Is it because it just simply doesn't exist?
Dave, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Look how long it took them to discover that. I mean, there were stories about these great silverback apes, but it took them decades to finally prove it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think my own personal belief is that
they're huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say again, Niall?
My own personal belief is that these creatures are part of folklore. They have to be, because they would have been found one way or another by now. And unless there is some huge conspiracy theory to keep their existence from the greatest minds of the greatest archaeologists in the world, I think it's reasonable to assume that they don't exist. And I think that's hard for people to hear, because I used to be part of the Bigfoot community, and it's a very distorted place to be in, because you have guys who say, "Oh yeah, I was driving up my in somewhere in Ontario or something in the middle of winter, and this 8-foot creature walked out of the trees, and threw a log through my windscreen, and I'm like, okay, yeah, and I was freaked out. I called the cops. By the time they got there, there was nobody there, and I was so freaked out. My wife was in the seat beside me, and these kind of stories go on ad nauseum about these direct confrontations with Bigfoot. So we have this contradiction between them being so elusive and yet confrontational at the same time. So they can throw rocks at people, fishermen in ponds and lakes. huge boulders into the river, and they can walk out in the middle of a trail and throw a stone at your car or throw a log through a windscreen, and these guys swear up and down, oh yeah, it was huge, 8 foot tall, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you have to kind of
see.
You have to have clear thinking when it comes to this kind of these stories.
I tend to think the other way around too. No offense to you personally, I'm not slamming you. I'm just saying that I sometimes see the other side of this argument, like you're making, as people who might be as totally convinced in their own way of seeing things as the people who we think might be making up stories or being carried away by a moment, for lack of a better way to put that. It's like with ghosts, or whatever you want to call them, the spirit realm. I was always a believing skeptic, meaning I kind of thought they all existed, but I'd never experienced it before. Now we're talking going back 30 years on that. And it wasn't until I actually experienced things, and then some of the people that I knew that were dyed-in-the-wool skeptical people remained dyed-in-the-wool skeptical people. There were people where I listened to something as simple as an EVP, and I heard in my old farmhouse, I heard a child's voice say up in my daughter's room, and I got it on a recording. It was deeply embedded in the white noise, but it said, with this tone of voice, it says, "Get out right now. Like, this is my room, and I'll stomp my feet if you don't get out." That was the tone of voice. I played that for my skeptical friend, and I said, listen to this. He listened to it 3 times in a row, and he said, I didn't hear anything. I said, you have got to be kidding me. And I started to wonder if it was like the tales that you hear of the Native Americans who couldn't see the tall ships. They thought they were clouds because it was completely outside of their paradigm. I don't even know how true that story is, but I've heard that story. You may have heard that before. The Native Americans here, when they first saw the sailing vessels coming from over to the New World, they thought they couldn't see them. They thought they were something completely
because
different.
they had no point of reference.
There was no paradigm. And so I think with Bigfoot, we've got that similar type of thing going on as I've had with the ghosts.
I think there's 2 different aspects that we have to tackle here, right? One is the reality of Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Does this creature exist in the wild, and does it sometimes confront human beings and sometimes not? And we have, is that a reality?
But the people who've been confronted will tell you yes.
Yeah, of course.
Well, and more you're catching them on camera, and that's because everybody's got a camera with them now.
Now everybody's got a camera compared to 15 years ago. So
on the other hand,
anyway, you were
background and they're.
On the other hand, going into the woo-woo land, as you were alluding to, of course, anything is possible once you go there.
Sure,
but,
sure.
I do, even on Skinwalker Ranch, they were talking at some stage of a Bigfoot and a gray alien,
right,
crawling out of a portal at the same time. And I'm thinking to myself, why would an 8-foot hairy guy be climbing out of a portal with a 4-foot hairless?
Did you never watch the $6 million Man back in the 70s?
Yeah.
You remember that, the $6 million Man, and he had the Sasquatch in later seasons to try to find some conservation to keep the show rolling.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm the Fox Mulder here. I want to believe.
Sure,
but I'm not stupid. I can't take all of these counts seriously. Whatever the motives of people who
I can't either. By the way, for the record, I don't take the majority of the accounts seriously. I was looking today just for this show to find some sound clips, and I was looking through pictures and stuff. The best photo still of a trail cam picture of Bigfoot ever taken. And I look at it and I go, fuck me, that is a guy in a suit. That is not, it doesn't have the configuration. I'm not a professional. I'm not an expert, and I could tell a guy in a suit from an animal.
The pictures I like the best are the ones where they're not trying, or seemingly not trying to shoot the Bigfoot. They're shooting something else, and Bigfoot is found in the background of the photo afterwards.
Yeah. And, one of the best ones I saw, somebody I really enjoyed watching his show was Les Stroud, who does, if you've ever seen the show Survivor Man.
Yeah, Survivor Man. He's great.
And he was getting so many things that would happen to him. And as he said during his show, he says, I'm not a Bigfoot guy. I don't know what to think about this. He says, but I want to give it some respect and do my best.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there is respect due. Now, I want to go back to the Patterson Gimlin film of the 1960s, which is the definitive evidence, and it's brilliant. I mean, it's very hard to agree or disagree with anything you see there. They took that to the best executives in Hollywood, Ridley Scott, in fact, and his entire production team, and they said, "Listen, can you duplicate that without using CGI?" And they managed to, but through a long process, they had to employ a trapeze artist from France who was like double jointed, and he could do that stride just about, and then they had to, put all these prosthetics on him, and then it was really heavy, and then they filmed that, and they were like, yeah, it's not quite there. This is Hollywood, the best of Hollywood.
Right, and this is modern day CGI. And modern day,
and no CGI, just
not CGI. I meant costuming.
Just purely a human in a costume, but with the guy was a trapeze artist. He was kind of double jointed, and he was like he could do everything. So okay, he can do the stride because this guy was like 6'3", and he can do the stride. Okay, but that's not quite right. So we have to, So they built this prosthetic suit around him, and Ridley Scott had the best of all the advice and all the scientific kind of stuff. Yeah, but the stride is not quite right, especially when you turn, because if you're in a suit that size, and you look back, it's not quite right. And they managed to do it, and they spent millions of dollars to do this. And eventually, Ridley Scott said, "We've done it," but it took them millions of dollars to do it, right? And
Patterson and Gimlin didn't have that in 1967.
Yeah, so you can look that up. So what the Gimlin film and the Patterson Gimlin film is you can't argue against, in my mind, what they filmed that day. But whatever it was, I think it's a creature who was probably died out or on the way of dying out, or else it lives underground or something like that. It certainly doesn't exist in ever since the Gimlin film surfaced. They picked it apart, in minute detail.
The one thing I liked about the picking apart of the Gimlin film, the Patterson Gimlin film, was that, well, first of all, I loved when they reconstructed it and stabilized the image.
Yes.
So you could see a smooth walking character, and then the background's just kind of moving around because they've stabilized the main character. They were able to
working.
Yep. And they were able to, they found, was it the original film or a copy of the original that somebody still had? Somebody, a person in a director or something. And he pulled that film out, and the resolution was tighter. And so they were able to see a little better resolution in the film. That's where they were pulling up the muscle ripples in the legs, the breasts, all of this stuff. And you say, that is
I think it would have
definitely
been awfully
not
hard for
a
them
guy
to
in a
fake that
costume.
back in that day.
Yep. And for that to be done in 90, and I saw they were trying to get specialists in Hollywood to reproduce it. Might
As I
have been
told
the same,
you, Ridley
the
Scott.
same thing with Ridley Scott.
They
And
did
they're
it.
saying
They did
we
it,
can't-
but it cost a fortune, and they had to.
Yeah,
get,
they said
know,
in 1967 they didn't have anything like this. They didn't have this
exactly.
to work with.
So that's an anomaly, and it's very hard to explain. So what that creature was, I believe, was a creature walking across that creek that day, because obviously they didn't have the prosthetics or
right.
The
I think it
stride.
was a Bigfoot. It was a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
It was the
Yeah.
stuff of Native American lore.
Well, to be honest, it could have just been an Italian woman.
yeah. But I mean, that's a long time ago now, 50 years or plus 60 years, and whatever that was, it could have been the last offshoot of a primate group who happened to be living in those mountains at the time, but they're certainly gone now. So the whole aspect of current Bigfoot occurrences.
Well, didn't they also say in that film, when you look at the whole film, there's a small one over on the tree line, and that she was leading them away to protect her young?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you really look into detail about, but again, sometimes if you look hard enough, you can see everything. It's like they've examined the Gimlin film to such an extent at this stage. It's like, look at that shadow. Look at that. That's another little Bigfoot looking through the trees. And look at this. I don't know. I think the Gimlin film is an anomaly. It's very hard to explain. They've taken the best experts to try and duplicate that, and they have duplicated it, but at huge expense. So I can't explain that. But that does not take into account the industry that the Bigfoot has become since then, and it is an industry.
Maybe they're just Wookiees from Kashyyyk and they like to come here for holidays.
Maybe. I think you're on mute, Scotty. Unless it's me. No.
No,
can you hear me?
He's not. I'm not hearing any sound from him.
Yeah, you're on mute. Yeah.
He unplugged something.
Yeah. So how you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. How are things in Ireland, man?
Oh, great. Yeah. Good conversation.
Yeah.
Bigfoot is a very divisive subject. It tends to get people very emotionally engaged.
Oh, but don't take anything I say personally. I'm just debating.
Yeah. I just try and look at the evidence, and I do find Bigfoot fascinating, but I certainly don't think they're wandering over the hills and throwing rocks at people and throwing logs at people. I'm not sure what people's motives are for reporting these, but I think for the most part they're kind of fake. I think a lot of these police reports about
testing. There we go.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
About creatures who walk across your path and throw a log through a windscreen. I think a lot of, people can be very deceptive. I think they might be having an argument with their neighbor over their land or something, or their fencing or their animals, and they say, if I say this, then, it's on,
I don't really pay attention to the anecdotal stories as much as I do the footage that's out there. Have you seen there's 2 or 3 guys that are, I don't know, they're in their 20s and they're out hiking on a mountain ridge. And
yes, the snowy mountain ridge.
And there's this footage of this being that walks down the mountain that's across the valley from him. It's clearly visible at a good clip. He's not carrying any equipment. He's not walking in a place. It's not like a normal mountain pass, and he's not walking to anything that they can see. If he was a hiker out there, it's like, where is he coming from? Is where is he going to? And he had a really good clip, comes down the mountain, and at one point stops because they're making so much noise, stops and turns and looks at them and then keeps going.
Yeah, I think they're two separate things, though. I think
and if that's some guy in a suit, he just got up that morning and said, "Hey, I'm going to put on this suit and walk down this mountain.
And I'm going to go up in the mountains. I don't know if anybody will see me, but I got to go practice my suit in the snow in the mountains."
Yeah. I mean, Scotty, you alluded to the. I suppose if you try and look at this logically, right? What are the alternatives here? They exist. They don't exist, or they exist on some dimensional plane. And if so, why do they have the form that they do? And what are they trying to say to us? Or
but there's so much of this planet where man has never walked.
Mm.
You know, I even look at the Pacific Northwest. There are places out there where no human has been. You know, and it's a vast country, and people that grow up in New York and places like that and don't know a world outside of a paved city, they don't get it. But when you're out west, and there's hundreds and hundreds of miles of just wilderness that people don't go in. There's no roads. There's no way.
Nobody goes there.
So who knows what's
not because they don't want to. They just it's wilderness.
And also, this is another what you were saying, Dave.
You know, I'm skeptical when people talk about seeing Bigfoot in Wisconsin and Minnesota and stuff, because I'm like, yeah, there's wilderness here. I can drive 20 minutes and be out in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, there are roads cut through there. And I would think if there was a tribe of Bigfoot living 50 miles from my house, that at some point I would have seen one.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the big arguments that I often have with people, because I come from a small island, obviously. So, you know, there's not going to be Bigfoot anywhere in the Wicklow Hills anytime soon.
But
so
obviously, on that same argument,
wait a second, Dave. Wait. I wanted to hear what he was going on there. What now about the Wicklow Mountains?
Yeah,
you're going to say something?
You're not going to find Bigfoot wandering around.
Oh, I thought you were going on with a point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I have a point. Dave is absolutely right.
On that same argument, so like not that long ago,
there's a lapse, I think here.
2 years, maybe 3 years ago, there were reports of a mountain lion within 20 miles of my house, one of the neighboring small towns, and somebody I knew took a picture of it in their backyard, and I saved that photo on my phone. And I happened to be at a wildlife thing that the DNR was putting on at a convention center, and I stopped at the DNR's booth, and I said to the guy, "What do you know about these stories of the mountain lions up in Zumbrota?" And he goes, "There's no mountain lions in Zumbrota. They're just misidentifying a dog or something." And I pulled up a picture and I said, "What does that look like?" "That's in my friend's backyard in Zumbrota." And he goes, "Well, that's a mountain lion." And I'm like, and it was taken 2 days ago. It's time stamped and everything. And you're telling me they don't exist, and I'm showing you a picture.
I'm not telling you that, Dave. I'm just saying.
No, but the DNR guy was saying there was no mountain lions anywhere near our town. And I'm like, here's a picture of one right there 2 days ago. And he's like, well, that's not where they're supposed to be. Well, good. That's not where they're supposed to be. But that doesn't mean that that's not where they're going to wander off for whatever reason.
Yeah, I just want to get back to a point that Dave made about the sheer size of the wilderness, especially when you get it up into the northwest territories of Canada, which is enormous, right? And you can get lost in there. Canada.
Now, Steph just brought up a very good point. Is that there are some of these places where some of these sightings have been on the increase, and the government has stepped in and closed it down and purchased the land.
Well,
close
like
down
I think she's talking about Skinwalker Ranch, probably.
Skinwalker is one of the places they've done that. They did it up in Washington State. Where
it's
with,
like they know
Bigfoot.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let me put it this way: if they do know something that is like really, really seriously confusing to them.
So
I mean, Bigelow was the guy who spent 7 years in Skinwalker Ranch, and there's no footage. There's, apparently all the cameras were screwed with, and there was UFOs flying over.
I don't know what to think about Skinwalker Ranch. I think that's a lot of hooey. But so there's a guy I know, military guy, was doing duty in the Pacific Northwest. When he got to whatever military camp that's up there that they were basing out of, they gave the entire squad manuals on what to do if you encounter Bigfoot. A military manual on what to do if you encounter Bigfoot.
I'd be very curious to see that. I'd love to get a copy. I actually know somebody who was in the American military in a Navy SEAL, so I will ask him about that.
Here's what we're gonna do. I am dead on my feet right now. I gotta get to bed. So as early as it is, being only 11 o'clock, I always say, look at my eyes. You can see if I'm tired or not.
They're tiny little pictures. I can't see them from here.
Yeah, really. So I want to thank you two guys for coming on. Niall, thanks for your time and coming in and expressing what you think. And Uncle Dave, all the time. So if he's not on the radio, he comes over to our house and does it. So, but then he brings food. So
yeah,
so that's good. He is a gourmet chef.
Food for thought.
All right, guys.
Food for thought. Talk to you later.
All right. See you, Niall. Thank you.
Seeing you, Niall.
And Dave, I'll see you too. I'm going to sign off right after this. So,
all right, give the kids a hug for me. And the wife
they're
too.
sleeping now, but I'll give the wife a squeeze. How about that? So, all right. See you later, Uncle Dave. Boom, you're gone. All right, guys. Everybody who's here, Steph for being here and sticking around. Lalanya, thanks for calling in and giving us your stories. I think that was a lot of fun to hear. It's fun. It's informative. It's great to hear, but it's also fun. It makes the show, I think, for me, very entertaining as well. I appreciate you doing that. And who else is still sitting in here? Matthew Sainsbury is here. And Sean Stroik is still here. And I think, did we lose Matt Finn? And I'm just scrolling backwards to see who might be around. And anyway, Steve Clark, I think he may still be here. I don't know. So all of you who've been here, Roger Rabbit is here. Good to see you, brother. I didn't see it till just now. So a field guy was here. He was going in and out of sleepiness. Well, I'm going into sleepiness right now. So, guys, I want to thank you all for being here. Thanks for giving me your time. Excuse me. Oh, that was a burp. I'm drinking carbonated something here. So I want to thank you for being here, giving me your time. And we'll see you back here tomorrow night, all right? So, everybody, live long and prosper.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.